let's start playing some NetHack, Jeremy.
Sounds good.
It's been a while. It's been, I guess, like a week since the last video went up, based on the imaginary schedule that I have in my head for these videos right now. But it's been maybe 3 weeks since we actually got together and played some of this. We've been busy.
Is it really that long? I mean, I was sick for like a week and a half, so time is kind of lost for me.
You've been sick. I had to travel a little bit. We've been trying to sync our schedules up, but we managed to do it. And I actually got some practice in since the last time we played, and got partway into a run that felt like it was going pretty well. And I spent the first half of it kind of just trying to remember all of the controls and stuff. And then I got maybe an hour or two into this run and was like, I should save this. This is pretty good. Should use it for the next episode. So here we are. I'm logged in. And I will fire up the game.
All right, I haven't seen you pop in yet.
Oops, I just tried to edit my config file. Shit,
Okay.
How do I quit out of this?
Just :Q should work. :Q enter.
There we go. I didn't hit P. All right, restoring save file.
Okay, I see.
And I'm back.
Wow, dungeon level 10.
Yeah, so compared
You're
to
quite
the
deep.
last time I played, I guess I just went a lot faster in this run, or I just had a lot less happen in general. Like I haven't found a shop yet.
I noticed
what
that you're a
happened.
samurai,
I am a samurai.
which maybe
so-
makes a little bit more sense as to how you managed to seemingly easily get to dungeon level 10 with a level 4 character.
Okay.
That's pretty low level for this point. I mean, obviously you're fighting probably less difficult enemies overall because your character level is lower, since it's based on both your dungeon level and your character level. But definitely a samurai is pretty durable overall.
Yeah, I have definitely not had as much combat on this run as I did in the one in the previous video. And I did actually, shortly before quitting, run into a pony, and things got real dicey. He was kind of kicking the shit out of me.
You didn't
And
have any apples or
I did not.
fruits?
So I have a little bit of food. I could have maybe thrown the donut at him.
He might have eaten a donut, yeah.
But I didn't do that. And first I was trying to fight him, and then I was trying to run away from him, and then he kicked me down to 1 HP, and I prayed, got all my health back, and then my dog killed him.
Nice. So one
pony.
interesting little tidbit is that, first of all, it actually is possible to start the game with a horse instead of a cat or dog, but only specific roles do. The knight is the only one I can think of off the top of my head. Starts with a horse instead. And actually, of the three, cats and dogs are almost identical, and I think they actually might be identical. Horses are actually more strong than cats or dogs. They have a higher potential. They can actually get stronger than cats or dogs can, and they also have additional utility. You can actually put a saddle on them and ride them.
Makes sense. Oh, there's a cickatrice here. Is this like a cockatrice, but a baby?
You heard the cickatrice hissing.
Oh, is it gonna poison me?
I don't know, man.
That would be bad. Yeah, you're
You
dead.
got to level 5.
Boom! Oh, that's just the door. Okay. So anyway, I think at the end of the last run, we had mentioned we might talk about job classes, or I don't know, classes is the right word for it.
So yeah, definitely. So samurai is one of the strongest. I still don't think the strongest overall, but definitely up there. Definitely one of the recommended ones for kind of actually attempting to get serious and see how far you can get consistently.
So I just got really lucky because when we were playing before, or you were watching me play, I was actually picking the role and everything, just because I kind of wanted to look through them myself. And for this last run that I started, I was kind of just wanted to get back into it and familiarize myself with the controls again.
Sure.
So I just let it randomly pick stuff for me.
Yeah.
And ended up getting a female samurai.
Did Did you happen to? So I have a couple of questions about this run. First of all, you said you didn't hit any shops or anything yet.
Yeah, I have
Um,
not found any shops.
so did you fully explore every level, or did you kind of just like gun it down?
I did not definitely didn't fully explore every level, but I was decently thorough.
Okay,
Um,
it's possible you missed some shops, but what I will say is if you have just got really unlucky and you haven't gotten a shop until now, there's a good chance you actually won't get any shops in the main dungeon because after at this point, dungeon level 10 and on, it's like I said before, it gets less and less likely to have shops generated. Um,
Yikes.
and this is already at the point where it's pretty rare, I think. It could happen, but you're much, much more likely to encounter one in the first couple, two or three, level two, level three, level four, kind of.
Interesting. Yeah, so it's probably back, down there somewhere. Um,
Potentially. I mean, it's also possible you just got unlucky.
there was a at least one point where there were, branching paths down, and I thought I might be taking one that, went to Sokoban or something, and
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
ended up taking the primary path.
So my other question is, you showed your inventory a second ago, but can you pop
Yeah,
that open again? I want to
I
see. I'm
can
curious
pull open the full thing.
what equipment that you're using.
Yeah, so I don't have anything really fancy.
Well, you got the
I
Elven Mithril coat, which is actually one of the best pieces of armor in the early game.
So that wasn't what I started with. I picked it up
Yeah.
and put it on, and it didn't change my armor level from what I had started with, I don't think, so I wasn't
Oh
sure how
no, it
great it was.
absolutely did.
Well,
Sorry, because you started with a splint mail.
yeah, I started at armor level 4 or armor class 4, and
Okay.
I was 4 when I put this thing on. And I just kind
Right.
of I was just, again, like, I wasn't really invested in it, so I just put it on without knowing if it was cursed or anything.
Right.
Um,
So
so I got
the
lucky
Elven
there.
Mithril coat. You start as a samurai with splint mail, I believe, which actually is quite good in terms of its defensive capabilities. But the biggest problem with that is it's really really heavy. And so
Okay.
Elven Mithril, the Mithril coat. There's Dwarven and Elven, um, and the really good thing about them is that they are extremely high. They have the same kind of armor classes as like plate mail or splint mail, really high armor class, but they're also extremely light compared to those.
So I'm using I guess this was by default, the wakizashi right now. I don't know if that's better than the katana.
No, absolutely not. So
Yeah, I don't know. I feel like that
the
got changed at some point.
yeah, it probably did. You probably pressed. So this is interesting, actually. This is a good point to mention this because I don't think we have before. If you go back to your inventory, you'll notice that the katana says it's your alternate weapon, not
Hmm.
wielded. So this game has similar to Dark Souls. Actually, this game has basically an offhand weapon slot that so just to make it easy for you to switch out to your other weapon. Um, Unlike Dark Souls, it doesn't count against your weight when it's not equipped, but you basically switch between those two by pressing X. So if you press X right now, which I recommend, it will switch back to your katana on your main hand.
All right.
Yeah,
Yeah, I almost certainly just pressed X at some point and didn't
yeah,
notice
yeah,
that
yeah. The
happened.
wakizashi is actually really weak. It's not really good for much. True to the real
It's your
wakizashi.
secondary sword.
Doesn't do a whole lot. You can
Holy
commit seppuku with it.
holy crap! There's a lot of killer bees here. I'm leveling up quite a bit. Hmm. Or how many killer bees I should fight before I back up a bit. Hachi, you can fight some bees.
Your hit points are doing okay at least.
Ooh, queen bee. I don't like that. Jesus.
Oh my
Oh,
gosh.
holy crap.
You are quite low. Maybe this would be a good time to
Whew.
check out your inventory and see if you have anything that can help you here.
Man, queen bee.
Looks like you haven't identified teleport scroll yet.
Yeah, I
Uh,
had a lot of scrolls.
any kind of item that could help you escape this situation.
I shouldn't have done that last hit. I was hoping I'd kill it. I do have a spell book of extra healing.
The spell book itself is not going to do you much good. Casting the spell could, but you could also just be killed in the process. I don't know how good. I don't think samurais are necessarily very good at casting spells.
Casting spells.
And you can, there's a chance to fail any spell that you try to cast, depending on your intelligence and things like that.
Well, I can try praying again.
When's the last time that you prayed?
Earlier this week.
I mean, like, in terms of the game time? So,
yeah.
was it pretty early on in the game?
No, it was relatively recent.
Okay. So there's a possibility if you pray. Like I said, you can easily anger your god if you pray too often.
Right.
It's based on your turn count, actually. So I don't really see a whole lot of else that you can do, though. So let's see what happens.
Well, that's good so far. I'm hitting. I just keep hitting enter, but it's not.
It's still. I think the queen bee is very fast, and so they're attacking you multiple times per your turns.
Well pleased.
Oh.
Okay.
Well, there you go.
All right.
Although
maybe
she took you down pretty quickly. I don't know. I mean, here's the thing. She's super fast. I don't recommend running. Because if you just run away straight up, she's going to be able to catch up with you and do hits on you at the same time. So you probably want to try to end it.
Fight. I mean, I have a lot of scrolls I can use if it comes to it.
Yeah, I don't know if you necessarily have any. Do you have any indication of what those wands do that you have?
No, I don't. So wands are specifically they do a specific action. They don't have any interaction with, like, you can't cast spells
They
that you
basically
have with wands.
they cast something when you zap them. And they have lots of different, it could potentially be like a lethal thing, it could be a damage thing, it could be completely utility, like there's a wand that unlocks doors. There's really no way to know unless you've kind of identified it in some way. Dude, this queen bee has got you on the ropes, man.
I know. My idea of continuing this run may have been overeager.
You're quite low in the dungeon, yeah.
Maybe I should wield one of the wands. Just give it a shot.
You don't have to wield a wand. You just have to zap it.
Oh, that's
with
right.
C. Yeah.
That's right.
Oh, it was a wand of slow. Well, that's good because it was very fast, but it's still doing quite a lot of damage to you.
Shit.
And unfortunately, it looks like you've run into a wall. Because I was going to say maybe you could escape now, but...
Yeah. Damn. All right, well,
let's try zapping the other one.
Yeah. Shit.
I don't recommend that. Maybe zap the other one again.
But it'll hit me again, right?
Yeah, but it's not a good position to have it hasted.
I think I should just use one of the scrolls and hope some good shit happens.
You could do that.
Was it R to read?
Yeah.
Shit. I think I'm probably gonna die, so.
It's highly possible at this point.
I mean, I guess I could drink one of my potions. Maybe that would be better than a scroll.
Yeah, I mean, it's a shame if you had known that was slow monster and speed monster, you could have slowed the enemies and then zapped the speed at yourself to make yourself fast.
How do you zap yourself? Do you hit 5 on the keyboard?
So, in addition to the directional keys that you've been using, pressing the period key is basically doing an action at yourself.
Okay. All right. Well, I just drank a potion that made me faster.
What did the scroll do? Or did you? Oh, you drank a potion.
I drank a potion that made me faster. Yeah. Let's drink this other potion. Donut juice. Oh, cool.
Shit, man.
5. Damn you, bee. I'm dead.
Well, let's see what you had.
Shit.
You
Confuse
have
monster would have been useful,
could have been good. Ooh,
but
enchant weapon. Blessed of enchant weapon even. Damn,
yeah, I've had some good stuff. I just,
definitely.
had no idea what any of it was. Damn. I definitely get cocky in combat because I feel like so many of the enemies I'll run into, I can just like deal with,
Yeah,
just
you have to
fine.
definitely be careful about it. So this was actually a dungeon feature that you ran into, like one of the features that occasionally pops up, similar to a shop, which is like the kind of bee nest, right, or like the hornet
Hmm.
nest, where it's a bunch of bees and there is a queen bee in there that's much stronger. And in addition to that, there actually are a lot of goodies in there. If you happen to clear that out, you get you can find a bunch of food in there called royal jelly, and it's the only place you can find it. And it's actually quite good. It has a lot of good properties, in addition to just being good food for you.
So, there are foods that affect like your stats, that kind of thing.
That do, yeah, there are definitely things that do other interesting effects other than just keeping you nourished. Not a whole lot of them, but they do exist.
Well, I
In
definitely
fact,
enjoyed
that's a big part
my
of the game that you will discover at some point.
food.
Eating things to have interesting effects. It's a humongous part of the game, actually.
Hmm, all right. A humongous part of the game I have not even dabbled with. Well, why don't we kind of make the rest of this episode be about the different classes as well, since I have died and now have the opportunity to pick another one.
Yeah, let's take a look at the list. Um,
So
and I
I've
can
got
tell
it
you
pulled
a
up
little bit
right
about
now.
them. If you think this is the right time, we can also, I can also kind of tell you the one that I recommend. It's up to you if you want
Sure,
to try
let's
something
do it.
out
I mean,
together.
I'm curious to know without feeling like I need it as a crutch because I've
Yeah,
done, you know, I haven't been dying on
I
level
feel like
one
you've
or
gotten a
anything.
decent sample at this point.
Yeah. So far I've played I played Thief or Rogue, and then I played the Barbarian? I think
You
I was
definitely played
Barbarian,
barbarian, an orc barbarian.
Orc Barbarian, and then I was just a human samurai.
Hmm.
So the some of the other roles here that I'm looking at are obviously very different than what I've been
Yeah.
playing so far, which is
So I'll
primarily
tell.
just weapon
Yeah, I
weapon
can tell you a little
classes.
bit about them. So the archaeologist is basically the quintessential, like, nerdy Indiana Jones reference. So you literally start with like a fedora and a whip, and
So literally an Indiana Jones
yeah,
reference.
those are kind of just mostly joke items. The one item that you start with that is definitely not a joke item that's really good with an archaeologist, and the main reason to pick that class is you start with a pickaxe, and the pickaxe can just break through walls or floors. You can literally just dig to the next floor.
Whoa, that's
It's
that's
kind of
nuts.
powerful, but also can be very dangerous
Yeah.
if you don't know what you're doing. Uh, it's a cool early game boon, but it's also not really all that hard to get a pickaxe yourself because you find them uh, pretty easily in the gnomish mines. Um, Archaeologist is probably one of the harder classes, to be honest.
That makes sense. It puts a lot of power to advance in your hands, but doesn't
Yeah,
necessarily give you the strength to survive
it's
that
used for
advancement.
it's used for some kind of like fringe strategies. Um, there's some kind of like I forget the exact terminology that they use in the community now, um, but they're kind of like these like fringe strategies, which aren't really like they're basically these ideas to like, hey, it's possible to win the game like this. It's extremely risky to do so. It has a very low success rate, but like if you get really lucky, you can basically get a head start or like get some crazy advantage that you wouldn't get if you were playing the game normally. And it's used in some of those. It's literally called digging for victory.
All right. So
Uh,
we kind of know the barbarian.
Barbarian, yeah. Also, a pretty good class though. The caveman, cavewoman. Let's see. What do I know about them? I haven't played many. I'm
Are
sure they're
you
extremely dumb.
are you just a dumber barbarian, basically?
Probably, yeah. I mean, I don't. I think even the barbarian has very limited spell casting possibilities. They probably have even more so. A lot of the spell casting is based on like just what your stats are, and of course, like it's possible to raise and lower stats within the game by doing different things, exercising or using special items. Um, but there are actually some classes and some combinations of things that have additional effects tacked onto that. So for instance, if you're playing as a wizard, regardless of what your stats are, you have like inherent bonuses to casting spells or things like that, or writing scrolls or doing things like that that other
Sure, makes
classes don't
sense.
have simply because you're a wizard. So yeah, one big thing that you haven't had any exposure to yet, which I don't think this is a huge spoiler, and I won't tell you much about it, but basically, one of the things that really sets all of the classes apart from each other, apart from like they start with some different items, different stats, and
Mm.
maybe they have a few hard coded things that they can do better than others. One of the things that really, really sets these apart is in the mid game, after you kind of have gotten past this early game section, which is honestly probably the early game is the hardest part of the game. Um, every class has an item that is destined to them, basically, that they will get. Like if you beat the game with that class, it's impossible to beat the game without getting this particular item, and it's
Mm.
different for every single class.
Okay.
And so one thing is like there might be a really good like a class that's pretty good, but like it's the item that it gets as its kind of like artifact is not that great, or maybe one class is really good but it also has a really good artifact, so it's like one of the best classes in the game kind of thing. So that's one aspect that sets all of these apart in a little bit. The healer is also involved in a fringe strategy, and actually the fringe strategy that I used to beat the game the first time. Um, and basically they start with, obviously they can heal by default.
Which is
uh,
pretty useful.
Yeah, they also start with I don't know if this is 100%. I think it's 100%. They also start with a spell called Stone to Flesh, which literally changes rock things to flesh.
Like
Uh,
statues.
yeah, like you can change statues to flesh. You can do other things, like you can change rocks into meatballs, which can be good for eating, or getting a pet, feeding a pet, to get them on your side, kind of thing. There's some interesting things you can do there. They have a couple of like weird. I guess. So they're kind of it's called healer, but the game kind of treats it like a doctor, uh, and so you actually start also with like a stethoscope item, which sounds like a joke item, and it kind of is, but it also has a pretty powerful use, which is you can see other things' hit points, so you can actually monitor your pet, or you can even see how many hit points an enemy has left, or something like that, which is kind of cool. So the healer is interesting. Knight, it's a really powerful class. It's one of the maybe the only class that starts with a horse. I think it is, which is great for many reasons. But I personally find playing Knight really annoying because they have a so the game has a lot of things are dependent on what, in addition to picking class, you can pick an alignment, whether you're
Mhm.
neutral or lawful or whatever. And
Right.
these actually have different things, like where you can anger your god or have negative effects if you do things that are not looked upon as righteous for whatever, alignment you are. Um, the knight has the most of those things. Like they have some hard coded ones where it's like they're basically supposed to be extremely honorable. And so like some of them are just super annoying. Like if you attack an enemy that happens to be sleeping, like it actually gives you, there's negative effects that happen, and like sometimes you don't want to be thinking about that all the time, right? Like it's just annoying.
Yeah,
Um,
I can see
so
that being a thing that I would accidentally mess up very
yeah,
very quickly.
I think the knights are a popular class. I personally don't like them just because I find them annoying to play, especially in the early game. So I've never really played much of the knight, but they are actually, as I understand, a pretty strong class. The monk is interesting. it can advance to a mastery of hand to hand that is beyond what any other class can do. And actually, they can get so powerful with hand to hand that it rivals weapons.
I was gonna guess this was like a boxing monk.
Yeah, pretty much. The monk also has a ton of restrictions. Like they're classed truly as like all of the different like restrictions they could think about of monks having, Shaolin kind of monks or something. So like you're enforced. You can't eat meat, anything that has meat in it, without taking some severe penalty. You actually are encouraged to not wear any equipment. You're very, very powerful without any equipment, but any piece of equipment that you put on, I believe maybe there's some exceptions, but for the most part, any equipment that you put on, you're penalized for extremely harshly, to the point where it makes it usually not worth putting that piece of armor, that piece of equipment on. Same thing with weapons. I think you get like a huge negative accuracy. So like you can't hit anything, even if you were to put on a good sword or something.
Just all you can do is punch.
Pretty
That's all you're good
much,
for.
yeah, yeah. And it's tougher too in the early game because the food thing, right? Like there's so much food, you can't just eat corpses off the ground. You really got to play it a lot more safely, which not only hurts you from a nutrition point of view, but like I said, there's lots of things that you can eat that do very good things for you, and you can't do that with a monk necessarily easily. So the priest, I think we talked about before. Their big thing is they can tell if something is cursed, blessed, or uncursed natively.
Which is pretty damn helpful.
It's very helpful. It's a super useful skill, and they're the only ones that can do it. But they're just not really. There's not really much else to say about them other than that. I mean, I think they might have some decent spell casting potential, especially for healing magic. All of the schools of magic are different, by the way. So just because you're like good at casting spells in one school of magic, you might be terrible at another. They're all classed differently depending on what kind of spells, what kind of things that they do. Anyway, so yeah, there's not really a whole lot else to say about priest other than that. Maybe they start with a robe, which is actually a very good piece of equipment, or at least it used to be. I haven't really messed around with it much in 3.6. I think they might have nerfed it. Rogue, you've played.
Lockpick, really helpful.
Yeah. Ranger is, I want to say, Rogue. So Rogue is kind of like the thief class. Ranger is like kind of the archer class. They're kind of similar, maybe. Maybe there's some key differences. They're both kind of like middle of the road classes. I think they're fairly tough, but not necessarily all that great. A little trickier to use, especially Ranger if you're using, arrows can get broken, and if you run out of them, and you don't really have a whole lot going for you, stuff like that. Samurai you played, they're good. They're kind of interesting because they have a lot of text that's changed specifically for them to be Japanese.
I noticed that.
Yeah, the ration is called like gunyoki and
konnichiwa.
Yeah, the things say stuff different. Very powerful class. It starts with a katana, which you can actually find a katana even if you're not playing as a samurai, but you could play the game for a long time and never see one and just think it's the only way to get one would be to start as a samurai, but it actually is possible to find one. It's just extremely rare, and it's one of the best like base class weapons that there is. It's just like a longsword, but I believe slightly better.
That good steel.
Yeah, and they start with the splint mail. They start with a good armor class. Overloaded, they're kind of heavy on weight to begin with, but just very well protected and overall really good. The tourist is kind of like the joke class. It's based on like the Discworld tourist. You start with a credit card, which is a joke item, but you can use it to unlock doors, which is kind of funny.
That's awesome. I was gonna guess that the tourist was like the kind of the challenge class where you
it sort of
basically have nothing.
It sort of is. You don't really start with a whole lot that's that useful. The one benefit is you start with a bunch of money. And this is also true with the healer. I forgot to talk about this because they're like doctors, and so they start with a bunch of money. And the tourist is the same way. So they start with a bunch of money, but they also start with a Hawaiian shirt. And in addition to that, I think they might also be one of the hard-coded things where if you're a tourist, whether or not you have a Hawaiian shirt on, Basically, the shopkeepers will size you up and see that you're kind of like that you're a tourist,
That you're a
and
mark.
they'll overcharge you for everything.
Dicks.
And they'll like, yeah, yeah, yeah. So the tourist is I've beaten the game with tourist a few times.
Really?
Yeah, I saw it as like the ultimate challenge when I was first playing the game, but then I've since realized actually I don't think it's even necessarily the hardest role. It seems really hard, but once you know a lot about the game, um, there's still roles that are harder. I think even like archaeologist is probably overall harder than tourist, and that's simply because while tourist is really crappy to begin with, and while the beginning game, the early game is probably the hardest part of the game, the tourist actually has pretty high potential for what they can become later on, which is
Super
kind of
tourist?
interesting. Yeah, yeah, you actually have quite a bit of benefits for later in the game. So if
Hmm.
you can get past that early part, you actually end up being quite powerful, and they have a very good artifact.
Okay.
Um,
So
so
before you say anything, I want to guess that Valkyrie is the role that you think is strongest in the
yeah,
game.
it absolutely is.
Okay.
I don't think there's any question about it. I'll tell you a little bit about the wizard first. The wizard is pretty much the most random class in the entire game. So there are a lot of classes that you played where I think you start one game, you look at your inventory, start the next game, and you look at your inventory with the same class. It's pretty similar. I mean, maybe there's a little bit of modification. Wizard starts with like random rings, I believe, and also random spell books, and those are completely random and could be like any of them in the game. And
Mhm.
so the range of what you can roll with a starting wizard is extremely high. You could be completely crap if you end up with worthless rings and worthless books and spells that but you could be like the most powerful thing ever if you end up with a good roll on those. And so wizard is like the save or the start scum roll. A lot of players will just like start a wizard, see what they have. If it's not
Yeah,
good, quit,
do
start a
it
wizard, just
20
keep going.
times. Yeah.
Yeah, until they get something good, and then they'll probably die anyway, and it'll be like an hour wasted of start gunning. Um, but yeah, I think like advanced players would say they're one of the better classes, but I think they're probably one of the hardest classes if you're not super advanced at the game.
Right.
Um, yeah, and so Valkyrie, it's just unbelievably strong across the board. So in addition to picking a Valkyrie, you can be a human or a dwarf. Uh, to make them even better, I recommend the dwarf because you can go into Minetown earlier, which we talked about, and most things will be friendly to you, which is extremely useful. You can get an early pickaxe that way and have basically the benefit of the archaeologist with the power of what is essentially the samurai that you were playing with. It's very similar. You start with a slightly less armor class, maybe, but a lot of that armor class you'll see if you go to your inventory here.
Just reading about my god Tyr and the
Yeah.
amulet. Tyr wants
So
to
you'll notice you didn't get
possess
to
that
pick an
amulet.
alignment.
I
That's
didn't
because all
pick a
or
gender. Is that what you said?
gender or an alignment. It's
Mm.
because all Valkyries are inherently lawful and female.
Hmm.
Uh,
Although if I got a book of gender changing like I had in my first
the
first or
the,
second run,
the amulet of changing.
that was what it was. Yeah.
Yeah. So if you look at your inventory here, so you'll notice your armor class doesn't seem all that great, but literally the only armor you have on right now
Is a
is
shield.
a small shield. And so all of this armor that you're getting right now is coming from your shield because it's +3, which is insane. So that basically means any piece of armor you find, you're going to be able to increase your armor class very quickly. Because a lot, what you already have an enchanted piece. Same thing with your longsword; it's already a +1, which is fantastic out the gate. What else do you have in there? Let me take a look.
Not much. Some food and a
Oh, let's start
dagger.
with food, which is nice. Dagger's not going to do a whole lot for you, but anyway, you're just unbelievably tough. If you look at your stats, you have basically maxed out strength, maxed out constitution. They're pretty much completely useless when it comes to spells, but the idea is that you're so powerful that you don't even have to bother with that, which is another reason why this is kind of like a beginner friendly um, class because it's just less to worry about.
Oh, it's not throw for food, is it?
It is, but I don't think you might want to check what that is.
Oh, can I not throw rations?
You can only tame certain animals, and that to me that doesn't look like one that you can tame.
Oh,
I
it
don't
was
think
a.
it's a dog.
It's a jackal. That's right.
Yeah, jackals are can't be. They're not a pet animal.
And I'll just kill it.
They actually can be tamed. Any monster, pretty much. Maybe there's a couple exceptions, but almost any monster can be tamed. Um, but not by the feeding thing. Only pet type animals can be tamed with feeding. But if you have like there's like a spell or a scroll of taming, which can actually tame things that couldn't otherwise be tamed.
Hmm.
And there are other ways, of course.
I guess Wait. See, is it with the dog? Oh, dog ate the corpse. Okay,
No, I think you picked it up.
or kitten. Wait, did I? Oh, didn't mean to. But I'll eat it. So, being a human Valkyrie, is there any real advantage to that other than? Yeah, is there any advantage to it? Period.
Maybe. I mean, to almost any question you can ask in NetHack, like there's some fringe
Somewhere along,
answer
yeah.
that's a yes, but I would say it's much more beneficial in the early game, especially, which is
To be
really the most important piece to be the dwarf, just because of the Mindtown friendliness.
So I hear a distant B note squeak. Somebody
Hmm.
somebody playing music.
Potentially, I don't recognize seeing that. Oh, so this is an interesting thing that happened here. I don't think this
Huh.
has happened to you before.
The squeezing myself into the opening.
Yeah, so you were able to actually move onto the same square as a boulder.
Yeah.
So this is something that can happen. You can actually do this. You have to be extremely lightweight. So you remember some of the times where you tried to move diagonally and it wouldn't let you because it says like you're too
Because that
heavy to get.
was too heavy, yeah.
So if you're extremely lightweight, or you have way less equipment load than what your capacity is, you can actually squeeze into the same tile as boulders.
Is that partially affected by being a dwarf and being smaller?
Now I think it's a product of having 18 strength plus and 18 constitution, and you haven't really picked up much yet.
How do I pull up the I guess I don't need a stat screen, do I? Because they're all
No, all your
just right
stats are just
there.
listed right
Yeah.
there. Yeah.
Let's see. Let's open a chest. Is it O for open?
Loot.
Get loot. There we go. Loot it. Yeah. Oh, let's kick it then. Thud. So the Valkyrie, did you start playing the Valkyrie when you were kind of first taking NetHack seriously and trying to beat it?
No, so I read about the fringe strategy with the healer that I told you about,
Hmm.
and that was so my first class ascended was a healer, which is I think actually one of the tougher ones. I don't think that's a common one for people to ascend the first time on. So you'll notice when you kick that chest, you heard like a muffled chatter.
Right.
Potentially that was something that was once in there and was
It
broken
broke.
by doing that. So something you want to watch out for.
Figured there was probably some
Might be a potion or something like that.
potential penalty to kicking shit open, but it was either that or not get it open at all. So,
Well, don't forget you can always come back for things too.
hmm.
And
Yeah,
this would be a good use of the like annotation that you can now do in 3.6 to levels, where you could like if you wanted you could annotate. Oh, there's a locked chest here. Like don't forget to come back to this locked chest kind of thing.
next time we come across something, remind me to do that. We'll check out the annotation.
Yeah, it
So
might
have
even
you?
tell you some of the it had actually done for you in the overview.
Yeah, I saw it did tell me like you found fountains on this level, that kind of
Yeah,
thing, which isn't that helpful. But
I'm not sure if it does that for chests or not, but anyway, what were you saying?
so after you beat it with the healer for the first time, did you ever really spend time playing with the Valkyrie, or did you go on to more
I did.
at that
I
point?
think I did samurai after that, and the Valkyrie became my class for trying to get win streaks. So there's in nethack.alt.org it will track your streaks of winning, which is like literally winning many successive games in a row. And so I would primarily do Valkyrie as like I want there to be a high chance that I'm actually going to be able to get past the early game again and not die to something stupid. And so yeah, I would try. I would usually use the Valkyrie as that kind of class. Um, I,
I'm,
I
you know,
also I also used Valkyrie for in particularly difficult conducts when I wanted to beat the game. While respecting certain conducts, it's good for that.
having, only played a few times and had relatively short runs compared to how long you say it can take the game. I'm kind of amazed at the concept of win streaks.
Yeah, and conducts are the same way, right? Like, I mean, especially once you get to the point where you're like close to beating the game, because it's NetHack is so that I mean, to even see something as a crutch, I think when you're first learning the game, as like, oh, I'm only doing this as a crutch. Like for instance, one of the harder conducts is like illiteracy, which is you can never read anything. So that means no scrolls, no books, nothing. Like you can't read anything. You can't engrave anything on the floor that are actual words. Um, all of these things are extremely like you realize when you think about like, oh, what would it even require to beat the game without doing that? That really like those are huge crutches that you use in the game. Or I mean, they just seem like things that are kind of necessary to get you further along. And so, thinking about actually cutting those out and still is a pretty steep concept. Even after you have beat the game a couple of times, it took me a while before I even attempted something like that.
So if you can't zap nothing, I guess, to test out how a wand works, because I just tried to use them in the direction of nothing and it didn't
Mm.
didn't do anything for me. Oh, damn it. I could have used it on that bug. Oh well. I guess I could have used the wands on myself, but that seems a little dangerous.
Yeah, there are some other ways um, you can go about
And I could use it
figuring
on
out what ones are.
my pet, but that seems potentially cruel and unusual.
Depends on what it is.
So, what is your longest win streak?
Uh, two? I don't think I ever won more than two.
I mean,
That's not my particularly strong suit.
hey, two's pretty freaking good, I think.
Yeah, I was really bummed out. I don't after losing after two or whatever, but
On the third run.
I think maybe I've had a couple of games where I've done two in a row with a Valkyrie afterward. But there's just so many little things that can get you. Uh, all of them, most of them are avoidable, especially if you're playing with a class as strong as the Valkyrie. But it's just very, very easy to make a mistake. Although there are players that have done, I think insane numbers, double-digit numbers.
It's an interesting comparison to the popular roguelikes now that isn't one of the metrics really that people use for success. This is a game that can take 20 hours to finish,
Yeah, I
and
mean,
yet
obviously, the people that are doing streak play are probably
much
beating it
faster.
much more quickly than that. But
But we're still talking hours to
yeah,
finish a game
definitely.
versus, a game of Spelunky. If you're doing a quick run, you might finish it in 20 minutes or something.
Yeah,
But there's nobody's like, I'm gonna try to beat Spelunky 17 times in a row.
yeah,
At least, I mean, maybe there are people doing that, but that's not part of like the competitive, scene. It's all about the speed runs and then
sure.
just like finding crazy shit to do in the game.
Yeah, well, I think the streak play also got popular in the community as kind of a defense mechanism too to people that were. There's a lot of other people in the roguelike community that play other games and don't look on NetHack as fondly as maybe like Crawl or Unbound or something like that, which are kind of competitor games that have extremely different schools of design.
Mm.
Um, and I think the one of the concepts of doing the streak play is like opponents of the game will sometimes say like, well, the game is just too random and you're at the mercy of too many things. But it's like the ultimate defense to be like, well, I beat the game 10 times in a row. And so to say that like there's things beyond your control, that's just because you don't know enough about the game yet. And like so you
Mm.
think that things are, and that's kind of like NetHack in a nutshell, right? It's like anytime you feel like I just can't get further than level so and so or whatever because like these few things just keep ruining my game every time. there is probably at least 5 different things involved in the things that you think are problems that you just don't fully understand. And if you did, you would probably never die to those things, or very rarely die to those things, right? So it's like it's just a game of knowledge. Like there's so many different things to learn about how you can get yourself out of different situations and what your options are.
Inspiring.
Yeah,
So,
it's interesting.
speaking of that knowledge, I just went into the shop, and one of the scrolls he had was the same one that I have here, Endova Bagarin,
Okay,
and it only costs 36 gold, which seems pretty cheap. I'm betting this is a scroll of Identify,
it's probably a good bet. Yeah.
so I'm gonna try using it, and oh, it is an Identify scroll, and I want to use it on my crystal plate mail. Wait, well that won't tell me if it's. Will that tell me if it's cursed?
Identifying tells you everything about it.
Tells you everything. Okay.
Yeah.
Then I'm gonna use it
It
on
will
that.
not only tell you if it's cursed or blessed or uncursed, but it will also tell you if it has any negative or positive enchantments on it too.
Right. Ah,
Yeah.
so glad I didn't equip that.
We'll sell it
I
to this asshole, see what he'll pay for it.
I was really thinking about doing that. Oh, now he's charging less for it? I thought he was charging 36 for it a minute ago.
It's possible he just. I think there are some variants to shopkeeper prices. So one of the main ways, I mean, obviously, what you're already doing is you're already starting to price identify things where you have some ideas about like this identify scroll being a very cheap scroll, for instance. The game actually does battle you a little bit on that, in that it will throw you for a loop a little bit, and sometimes the shopkeepers will change their prices or offer you a different price based on some randomness or something like that.
So
Um,
how do I sell to him?
you just drop something in his shop, and then he'll give you the option.
Ah, all right. Let's drop this piece of shit armor then. 410.
Damn,
Wow.
he really wants that. Don't tell him it's cursed.
Yeah. It's going to be a rude surprise for him. So maybe I should buy this dwarvish mithril coat.
Dwarvish Mithril Coat is the best starting armor in the
Oh
game.
shit.
But hopefully it's not cursed.
Hopefully it's not cursed.
So Dwarvish Mithril Coat, you had the Elvish last time.
Yeah.
Um,
Is this one heavier?
there is some differences. I don't remember if one is heavier than the other. They're both light, actually. They're both quite light. Uh, the Dwarvish is 1 defense point by default higher. Like so, it's one defense point better than the Elvish, which makes it
Mm-hmm.
just the best. Um, the one downside to it is that it can't be easily enchanted to a very high value, but that almost doesn't matter at all because really, as you'll see later, nobody's going to be really bothering enchanting that kind of armor anyway. Because
Gotcha.
there's even better armor that you can get later in the game. But for the early game, the Dwarvish Mithril Plate is always the armor that I'm looking for.
Wow. And now he's trying to sell that piece of crap armor I sold him for way
I
more.
think I think the crystal plate mail is like the most expensive base type armor in the game.
Now I forget how I check out.
So you can press P to pay.
P to pay. So yes, I'm getting another scroll. Identify, buying a key, and hopefully some really awesome armor.
So did you ever figure out a good way to? So obviously you know about the altar that can tell you if something's blessed or cursed or whatever else.
Yes.
Are there any other ways in your knowledge right now to do such a thing
In my vocabulary.
other than in identifying straight up?
No.
So this is a really you've had a couple of instances where you had the opportunity to notice this thing, but you just it's very easy to miss things.
But I'm dumb, so.
So I'm wondering, like, this is a really important one. It's something I didn't necessarily want to spoil you on early, but I feel like you've been playing for long enough that maybe I give you a hint about this.
Maybe I'm oblivious.
Well, because it makes it it makes it it makes it so much easier to know fairly easily if something is at least cursed or not, which can be extremely problematic if you have no way of telling, like you just haven't found an altar or something.
Right.
I was waiting for the right time when you had kind of noticed a certain message, but it has passed a couple of times. I think you just didn't notice. It's very easy to miss. But basically, okay, I'll just tell you because I think it's been enough time. So try dropping that on the
I
floor.
was I was gonna ask if this had something to do with looking at it when it was on the ground.
It doesn't necessarily, but it's another reason to keep. It's another reason why keeping your pet around is actually so important. One kind of sort of hidden aspect of them is that they will, if you just kind of hang out around this item, like just
Hmm.
sit there and just press search or something until they go. Pets do not like to walk over cursed items. They just don't like it. And if they're forced to, you can actually force your pet to walk through it by like, putting it in a hallway and like waiting for him. See, in this case, it seems like he's avoiding it, right?
Yeah. So
If
when you
he
say
happens
walk
to walk,
over,
like to
is
actually walk onto the same square.
okay, so that's separate from actually picking it up.
Yeah, I mean, well, obviously they won't pick it up if they don't go onto the square, right? So in
Yeah.
this case, your pet is, to me, pretty clearly avoiding it. I think it's cursed.
Yep.
If
Okay.
he happens, like, you can actually put it in like a hallway and force him to walk over it.
Hmm.
If so, you actually get a special message that says like your pet moves reluctantly or something like that.
Okay. I have seen that message,
Yeah,
but
exactly.
yeah,
And
I
so that's
didn't.
basically what that's telling you is that your pet is trying to move over a cursed item. So I'm gonna bet that that is
So
cursed at this
let's
point.
test that.
Yeah, you could do that and just see if he'll get close to you here. You'll have to be kind of close to observe it. And it might take him a while. It's actually best to kind of like corner him so that the only possibility if he wants to move is to move over it.
Mm. Yeah, he's not coming to me.
Yeah.
All right,
I
so
think that's safe to say.
I'm gonna go sell this back to this guy.
Yeah, it's unfortunate because that's a really good piece of armor. It,
Now,
it, it
there's a way
might
to uncurse stuff, right?
There is, absolutely, yeah. It might actually be worth, or there's many ways I should say, it
Yeah.
might actually be worth identifying that since you have another scroll to see what the, if any, negative consequences are doing so. I mean, it's possible it's a cursed piece of armor, but there's no negatives on it. In which case, like, you're not really going to be taking it off anytime soon anyway. So,
Good point. I'll let my pet eat that.
but it could also be like -3 or something terrible.
Yeah, that which would kind of ruin my whole Valkyrie advantage. P. Yep.
It's only a -1. So that makes it the same as your Elvish Mithril coat that you had in the last game.
Hmm.
So I would say it's probably still worth it.
So okay, so that's like -1, not to your
Off of
total
its,
stats,
yeah,
but
no,
off
that's
of its.
-1 off of its base defense value.
Okay, I could go
So
for
I
that.
think that's going to bring you down quite a bit. Yeah, that bring you all the way down to armor
Wow.
class 1. So I think it's still worth it.
All right, good to know. Let's see. I'm gonna pick up this potion, and I feel like this is a good place to stop, wrap this episode, take a break,
Yeah.
and now that I'm a pretty powerful class with a pretty good starting point, maybe next episode we'll delve deeper than we've gone before.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, even like the Valkyrie is just so good in this game that, they're even with the limited knowledge that you have of the class right now, just from starting and playing a little bit, I mean, it's already very good. But there are a lot of things that you just haven't really, aspects of the games that you haven't really even experienced yet that make it even better than it probably appears to be, even at the surface. So there's lots of potential and lots to learn with this particular class.
Awesome. I hope we get to at least one or two of those things to learn in the next one.
I think so.
Awesome. All right. Until next time. This is NetHack, I guess.